They thought her pain made her weak. They didn't know it was building her into something unstoppable. I returned home after 7 long years, carrying a small bag, an old phone, and a heart full of wounds I never learned to heal. The bus dropped me at the edge of the town, the same dusty, quiet place where I grew up. Nothing had changed here. The same cracked roads. The same slow breeze. The same silence that used to feel peaceful but now made me uneasy, like the whole town was holding its breath, waiting for something to break. I stood there for a moment, letting the cool morning air brush against my face. My chest tightened. This place held too many memories, good ones, painful ones, and some I wished I could erase. I looked around, half expecting to see familiar faces, but the street was empty. Only the distant sound of a tractor and a dog barking somewhere far away reminded me that life still existed here. I adjusted the strap of my bag and started walking down the lane. Every step felt heavier than the last. The houses on both sides looked older, their paint peeling, their gardens unattended. Time had moved forward, but this place remained stuck in the past, just like the version of me I had left behind. When I reached the end of the lane, I saw the farmhouse. My childhood home. Once it looked warm, safe, alive. Now it stood like a reminder of every broken promise, every harsh word, every door that had been shut in my face. The tall dry grass around it swayed in the wind. The windows were closed. The porch was covered in dust, and the wood looked tired. Even the air felt different around this house, heavier, colder, almost warning me to turn back. But I couldn't. I had come for a reason. As I walked toward the door, memories rose in my mind without permission. My mother standing on this same porch, yelling at me to leave, telling me never to show my face again. I had been shaking with anger and heartbreak. I still remembered how the door slammed behind me that night. That final sound stayed with me for years. I stepped onto the porch slowly. My heartbeat echoed in my ears. My hand trembled as I raised it to knock. Before my knuckles touched the wood, the door opened. My mother stood there. For a moment, neither of us moved. We just stared at each other, as if trying to recognize the people we had become. Her hair had more gray in it now. Her face had more lines. But her eyes, those sharp, strict eyes, looked exactly the same. They used to comfort me when I was little. Now they made my stomach twist with old fear. "Ahem," she said, her voice low, cautious, unsure. "Yes, Mom," I answered quietly. "I'm back." She didn't smile. She didn't open her arms. She didn't even step aside at first. She just looked at me as if the past 7 years were still hanging between us like a thick cloud of smoke. Finally, she moved back and let me in. I stepped inside, expecting the warmth of old memories, but the house felt colder than I remembered. The wooden floor creaked under my shoes. The living room smelled of old furniture, dust, and something else, something like loneliness. I scanned the room. Everything seemed smaller, more silent, almost abandoned. The walls still had the same framed photos, but they felt like they belonged to someone else's life. A part of me almost expected to see someone else there. Someone I still thought about every night. Her. Aiza. The girl next door. My first love. My biggest heartbreak. I could almost see her sitting by the window, smiling at me the way she used to, before everything fell apart. But the house was silent. Too silent. My mother watched me carefully, the same way she used to watch me when she thought I was hiding something. Her stare felt cold, distant, almost offensive. I didn't know if she still hated me, or if she was afraid of what my return would bring. Maybe both. I sat on the edge of the sofa. She stayed standing, arms crossed, like a wall between us. After a long silence, she spoke. "You came back for the will." I nodded slightly. Grandfather wanted me to be here. Her jaw tightened. It's funny how people suddenly return when money is involved. Her words cut deeper than she knew. Or maybe she knew exactly how deep they would go. My throat tightened, but I didn't respond. I wasn't here for money, not the way she thought. I was here because I needed answers. Because 7 years ago, something happened. Something that pushed me out of this house and out of this town. Something that broke Aiza and me apart in one night. And my mother had never told me the truth. The pain of that night lived inside me like a wound that never stopped bleeding. Forever burning. Forever asking. As I looked at her now, standing there with the same cold expression she had the night she drove me away, Something inside me whispered. She knows something. Something she never wanted me to find out. She walked toward the window, looked outside for a moment, then said quietly, "Some things are better left in the past, Aham." The words felt like a warning. But the question inside me was stronger than my fear. "What happened that night, Mom?" I asked softly. She didn't turn around. Her shoulders stiffened. Her fingers curled slightly at her sides. She was hiding something. And for the first time, I felt truly sure of it. Before I could ask again, her voice snapped through the room. "The lawyer will be here tomorrow morning. Stay until then if you must. After that, you can leave again." Leave again. As if I had ever wanted to leave in the first place. As if she hadn't pushed me out herself. I swallowed the ache rising in my chest. I reminded myself to stay calm. I wasn't here to repeat old fights. I was here for the truth. I was here for the will. And deep in my heart, I felt something else, something painful, something almost frightening. I was here because some part of me still believed that the mistakes of the past could be fixed, or at least understood. But my mother's cold voice told me that this house held more secrets than love now. And I had just walked back into all of them. The air felt heavier. The silence felt sharper. And a strange, quiet fear formed inside me. Was I really welcomed back? Or had I stepped into a place that would break me all over again? The next morning arrived slowly, like the sun itself was unsure whether it wanted to rise over this house filled with old wounds. I barely slept. My mind kept replaying everything. My mother's cold eyes, her strange warning about forgetting the past, and the heavy silence that seemed to live inside this house like a ghost. When I walked into the living room, my mother was already there. She sat stiffly on the old wooden chair near the window, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Even her posture felt like a locked door, closed, guarded, refusing to let anything in. She didn't look at me when I entered, but I felt her notice me. She always had that sharp awareness, even when she pretended not to care. "You look older," she said finally, her voice flat, almost emotionless. "So do you," I replied gently. But she didn't smile. She didn't soften. If anything, her shoulders stiffened even more. For a moment, the silence between us felt louder than our words. It was the same silence from 7 years ago, the silence before the storm, before the accusations, before the night that pushed me out of the house I once thought would always be mine. She finally lifted her eyes and said, "Why now, Aham? Why come back after all these years?" I took a breath. "You know why. Grandfather's will." She narrowed her eyes slightly. Not anger, something else. Something like disappointment. Or fear. "Of course," she said sharply. "Money. That's all people return for." Her words hit me harder than she probably meant. Or maybe she meant it exactly that way. I felt something twist inside my chest, but I kept my voice steady. "I didn't come back for money." She looked away quickly, almost as if she didn't want to hear the truth, or didn't want me to see her reaction. "You people always say that," she murmured. I frowned. "You people? I'm your son." For a moment, just a small one, her eyes flickered with something that looked almost like pain. But she buried it fast, hiding it behind the same cold walls she had built the night she sent me away. Instead of answering, she stood up and walked toward the small wooden drawer near the kitchen. Her steps were tense, controlled. She opened the drawer slowly, as though the object inside was something she feared touching. When she returned, she placed a small wooden box on the table between us. I recognized it instantly. It was the same box from that night. The night the truth vanished. The night I lost everything. "Do you remember her?" my mother asked quietly. The simple question struck me like a punch. Yes. Of course I remembered her. How could I forget? Aiza. The girl who lived next door. The girl who laughed with her eyes. The girl who planned a future with me. The girl who disappeared without a goodbye. My throat tightened. "Why are you bringing her up now?" "Because she left you," my mother said sharply. "She chose someone else." "She didn't," I whispered before I could stop myself. "She loved me." My mother's jaw clenched. But something in her face, something small, something she couldn't hide fast enough, gave her away. Fear. Why would she be afraid? She sat down again, her hands gripping the box like she needed to hold onto something solid to stop herself from shaking. She looked at me, and for a moment it felt like we were not mother and son, but two strangers forced to confront a truth neither wanted to face. "I did what I had to do," she said suddenly. The sentence felt out of place. Out of time. Out of breath. "What do you mean?" I asked slowly. Her eyes shifted away. "You should forget the past, Aham. It will only hurt you." Her voice trembled, just a little. But it was enough. Enough to confirm what I had suspected ever since I walked back into this house. She was hiding something. Something from 7 years ago. Something she was terrified I might discover now that I had returned. Before I could ask again, a sound broke the tension, the crunch of footsteps on gravel outside. We both turned toward the window. The lawyer. His car pulled up slowly, the morning light reflecting off the windshield. My mother straightened her clothes quickly, lifted her chin, and put on that cold, emotionless mask she always wore whenever she wanted to look strong. But I wasn't looking at her clothes. I was looking at her eyes. And in her eyes, I saw panic. She didn't want the will to be read. She didn't want the truth to come out. She didn't want me here. But it was too late. The lawyer knocked on the door. My mother opened it with a practiced calmness, the kind that only people with guilty hearts try to use. He greeted her politely, then turned to me with a warm smile. "Aham," he said. "I'm glad you came." "Thank you," I replied, though my voice felt distant, as if it belonged to someone else. We all sat down in the living room. The atmosphere was thick, heavy, like the air before a storm breaks open. The lawyer opened his briefcase and pulled out the will papers, placing them neatly on the table. My mother clasped her hands tightly. I could almost hear her fingers tremble. The lawyer began reading the formal words, but I couldn't focus. My eyes were on my mother. Her breathing had changed, short, uneven, nervous. Why? What truth was she so desperate to hide? Then a strange thought entered my mind. Something that made my stomach twist with both fear and anger. Aiza. The box. My mother's fear. Her warnings about forgetting the past. Everything pointed to one thing. She had kept something from me. Something about Aiza. Something about that night. Something about why she disappeared. My mother suddenly said, "Just read the will quickly. We don't have all day." The lawyer looked surprised but continued. My heart pounded. My mother looked pale. The morning light felt cold. Something was coming. Something that would break the silence of 7 years. Something that would expose every lie hidden in this house. And as the lawyer flipped to the final page, I realized. Whatever was written there. My mother was terrified of it. And I was about to find out why. The lawyer adjusted his glasses, cleared his throat, and read the lines of the will slowly, carefully, as if each word was a stone being placed on the table. My mother sat rigidly beside him, her fingers clenched so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She didn't blink, didn't breathe, didn't move. It was like she knew what was coming, like she had been dreading this moment for years. I sat across from her, my hands resting on my knees, my heart beating too loudly in my ears. The room felt smaller, the air heavier, as if the walls were secretly listening. Then the lawyer reached the final page. His voice softened, as if the words themselves carried weight. "This will," he said, "leaves the entire property and all assets to Aiza's son." The room fell silent. The kind of silence that feels like something breaking inside your chest. My mind emptied. My breath caught. I didn't understand at first. Aiza's son? That couldn't be right. Why would my grandfather leave everything to her child? I turned my head slowly, like my body had suddenly become made of stone, and looked at my mother. Her face was pale, so pale it looked almost grey. Her lips trembled. Her eyes widened for just a second before she dropped her gaze. And in that moment, I knew. Before anyone said it, I already knew. My voice came out small, cracked, almost broken. "Whose son?" The lawyer looked confused, flipping through his papers. "A boy named Hardy, age 6. According to your grandfather, he has been living in this house for the past few years." I stopped breathing. 6 years. 6 years ago was the year I left. The year everything shattered. The year Aiza vanished without a word. My throat tightened painfully. My vision blurred. My chest felt like it was being crushed. I stared at my mother, and this time I wasn't asking with my voice. I was demanding with my eyes. Tell me the truth. Tell me what you did. Tell me everything you hid from me. She closed her eyes slowly, as if holding them open would make her fall apart. He's upstairs, she whispered. Her voice wasn't cold anymore. It was defeated, weak, broken. My whole body froze. Upstairs? My son was upstairs? You hid him from me. My voice cracked, shaking like it was made of glass. She pressed her hands to her face, choking on her breath. I did it for the family. For your future. For your reputation. You were too young, too lost. You weren't ready to be a father. I didn't get the chance to be ready, I said sharply, my voice trembling with anger and heartbreak. Because you decided everything for me. Her tears fell silently as she shook her head. I thought she would ruin your life, Aham. I thought she would destroy everything you work for. So I sent her away. Each word was like a knife sliding deeper into me. You did what? My voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was the kind of quiet that carried more pain than screaming ever could. She looked up at me with eyes filled with regret. I told her you didn't want her. That you were leaving the town for good. I told her you had someone else. I told her. Stop. I couldn't listen. I couldn't breathe. She continued anyway, her voice breaking. I told her if she stayed, she would destroy your life. So she left. She wanted to tell you the truth, but I made sure she didn't get close to you again. My hands trembled uncontrollably. You took my family from me. The words tasted bitter. You took my child. You took everything. She sobbed into her palms. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was saving you. No, I whispered. You were saving your pride. Not me. She looked at me helplessly, tears streaking down her cheeks, but I didn't feel sorry for her. Not anymore. Not after 7 years of pain. Not after the truth had finally risen from the grave she tried to bury. And then, suddenly, the real revenge became clear. It wasn't mine. It had never been mine. It was my grandfather's. He knew what she had done. He knew the truth. He knew about the lie that destroyed 2 young lives. So he left everything, every cent, every piece of land, every part of his legacy, not to her, not to me, but to the child she tried to hide. Her punishment wasn't anger. It wasn't shouting. It wasn't being thrown out. It was this. Nothing belonged to her anymore. Not her house. Not her land. Not her pride. And she had no one to blame but herself. She slid off the sofa, falling to her knees, clutching at my arm desperately. Please, Aham, please forgive me. Her voice trembled like a frightened child. I didn't want to lose you. I stepped back, her hand slipping away from my sleeve. For 7 years, I said softly. You already did. The lawyer stood awkwardly, unsure of what to say or do. But none of that mattered anymore. Only one thing mattered now. I turned toward the staircase. My legs felt weak. Each step felt like a lifetime. My heart beat louder with every wooden creak under my feet. And at the top of the stairs, I saw a small figure standing in the hallway. A little boy. Dark eyes. Soft hair. A face so painfully familiar that my breath caught in my chest. He looked at me with innocent curiosity. No fear, no hesitation. Just a quiet, searching look. His voice was soft, gentle, almost trembling. Are you my father? My eyes stung instantly. My heart broke and healed in the same moment. I closed my eyes, swallowed the pain, and whispered, Yes, I'm your father. His small lips curved into a shy, hopeful smile. A smile I had waited 7 years to see without even knowing it. Behind me, my mother sobbed harder, but I didn't turn back. Not anymore. I knelt down to the boy's height. And I'm never leaving again, I said, my voice steady. His tiny hand reached out and touched mine, unsure at first, then holding tightly, as if he had been waiting for this moment his whole life. In that moment, everything made sense. The lies, the pain, the years lost, the truth won in the end. And sometimes, revenge doesn't need anger or destruction. Sometimes revenge is simply the truth standing in the open, refusing to be buried anymore. Final line, unchanged. Sometimes revenge doesn't come in anger. It comes in the truth your lies can no longer hide.